Gentlemen, welcome to the Be the Man podcast. I'm your host, Greg Denning. I'm the creator and coach of the Be the Man Masterclass and Tribe, which, by the way, we've been having such special, meaningful, impactful, life-changing discussions lately in our weekly live meetings. It's been so powerful. And it's a chance for men to be raw and real and open, a place for them to turn to. And men need this. Men need this community where we can connect and talk about real things. It's like so few guys will get together and talk about real things. They talk about sports or buddies or whatever. They'll complain. But to get together and say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. And let's get some ideas here. Let's share what we've collectively learned, and then get the coaching and the camaraderie and the support to make those changes. It's literally been life-changing, so impactful, so powerful. Last week particularly was about marriage, and marriage can be challenging, man, and hard. Right? It's hard to live with another human being, but then another human being of a different sex and gender, and in a completely different lifestyle and life experience and different ways of thinking and living and feeling, and a woman is constantly changing, right? I just came across a doctor who's been doing this research on a woman's body, and I actually got him scheduled to be on the podcast. Super excited, but he started doing this research, and he realized that the estrogen levels in a woman's body and her body, her biochemistry is changing every week. And so he says, you're going to change every week. Well, it's going to affect your emotions and feelings every week. And he says boldly, but not in a derogatory way, that there's no such thing as an emotionally stable woman. Let that sink in. That's so powerful. It's like, well, a man's biochemistry is pretty simple and kind of can stay even, but a woman's body is changing independent of her routines and how she's doing. I mean, obviously she needs to manage all that, but just by biology and biochemistry, her body's changing every week. And so, that's a totally different experience than a man. And so figuring that out it's tough. It's not. Most people make it too complicated. They make it harder than it needs to be. But it's such an important work and such an important thing. And we need to be world-class husbands and world-class dads and world-class businessmen. And that's why we're here. And so thank you for listening. Thank you for being that caliber of man. And I know some of you are in the masterclass already, and it's just such an honor and privilege to me, and I love it. I love learning with and learning from this great group and sharing the tools and strategies that I've learned over 2.5 decades of voracious searching. So what an awesome thing. All right, fellas, let's dive in. I've been thinking about this for quite a while. We live in such a fascinating time, and I love to study history. I hope you love to study history. I hope you're constantly reading the great books throughout history, and there's a lot of powerful books that come out during what's called the Fourth Turning. In fact, the authors of the Fourth Turning just wrote, the one of them passed away, the one who's still alive just finished a new book called, I think it's called The Fourth Turning Is Now, or The Fourth Turning Is Here. So we just bought that. I'm excited to dive into it. But essentially, the fourth turning it's essentially every 80 years, and every 20 years is a turning. So every 80 years is a fourth turning. The fourth turning for the last 500 years of history has been a war or some kind of collapse in society that resets everything. And reading books from fourth turnings are really powerful. So all the books from World War II were the last turning, right? And those kind of books from Let There Be Light, and There Was Light by Jacques Lucerian, one of my all-time favorites. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, which is worth rereading every year. The Hiding Place, Beneath a Scarlet Sky, Night, Unbroken by Louis Zamperini. So many good ones. And I just finished Wild Swans, which, man, I'll circle back to that because it's so powerful. But it's been on my mind. And what brings it out right now is it's such a fascinating time in the history of the world because of technology, because of now AI that's coming out, and AR, and all the inventions. It's just been such an unbelievable time of inventions. Now, because we come into life, we're born, we're just kind of experiencing life, and we just experience what's there. We don't know any different until we really start researching and studying. And those who don't study don't ever realize how different their lives are, how unique and how interesting in the time period and the place in the world. And if you don't get out and travel, then you just naturally assume that, oh, life is like this. But if you travel extensively and study across time and space, then you realize, wow, okay, here's what's similar about human beings and the human experience, and here's what's different. And we live in an absolutely extraordinary time. It's a great time to be alive, but there's a lot of crazy things happening too. There's a lot of evil that you've heard me talk about, from, especially I think the one that's really standing out is the human trafficking, the literally millions of people who are still slaves right now in this time. It's insane that that's even happening. But violence is picking up all over the place. And societies are beginning to crumble, as are economies. And it's an interesting time. But in spite of all that, man, it's still, what a wonderful time to live. With all the inventions and all the cool things and so many comforts and convenience. The fact that I can record this podcast and you can listen to it from wherever you are, and I can record it from wherever I am, and I just have my phone. I'm actually recording this into my phone with this beautiful little microphone, and I'm sitting here in my office in Portugal. It's unreal. And I'm on my desk here, I've got cameras and microphones and laptops and desktops and amazing books that we're reading, and my journal that I'm writing in, and these phenomenal pens. I love pens, so I can write with. And I mean, just looking around, there's so many great things. And the carpets, we bought these unbelievable Turkish rugs when we were over in Turkey, and brought them back, and these antique desks and chairs, and I mean, wow, what a time to be alive, right? There's so many cool things, so much going on. But what's interesting is that so many people who are doing okay today in life are only able to live the way they live because we are living in such easy, comfortable, convenient times. And I want you to chew on that for a while and just kind of contemplate that. So many of us, and perhaps you are included in that there's things you're kind of letting slip a little, and you're taking it easy and doing just enough. And the only way you're able to pull that off, the only way that men are able to get by or get away with it, is because times are so easy, so comfortable, so convenient, that if there was a test, a real true test, would they endure it? Would they hack it? One of the great thinkers from several decades ago, I can't remember who it was right now, he said that every generation needs a war or its moral equivalent. And usually, again with the framework of the fourth turning, you get 2 or 3 generations without a war. And there's always little small conflicts, there's always little wars, but the idea here is like it's a major war, it's a world war, it's something so big, that society and economies, the things as they are cannot remain. It's that big, it just undoes everything. And we haven't had that. So essentially, since World War II, it's been relatively easy and comfortable and convenient, and there's been so much progress. I mean, we'll just chew on that for a second. Since 1950, just think about how the world has changed since 1950. It's just so astounding to me. Medicine, transportation, technology. I mean, since 1950, it is unreal what's happened with music and radio, TVs and movies. Man, just even since the last 20 years, look what's happened in the movie industry. I mean, you watch a cartoon with your kids that was made 20 years ago. The ones we watched when we were kids, when I was even maybe 30 years ago, 40 years ago, But you look at those movies, those cartoons, even when Pixar came out and those animated ones came out, and they seem so amazing. Now, if you watch the first one versus the last one, you're like, what a difference, what a contrast. The things they're doing with brain imagery, now with stem cell research and injections. There's so much going on. It's so rad. So from 1950, and what's really cool is because there was cameras and radio and all that stuff, we have records of how things were. And now we can contrast that. It is so exciting and so cool, and it's going to keep going. What will happen in the next 50 years? So when you and I are old men and we're grandpas and great grandpas, and hopefully we live that long if we take care of ourselves, what changes will happen between now and then? Man, that's exciting to think about. But I really want to emphasize this point, that we're only able to get by, we're only able to get away with things because it's so easy and comfortable and convenient. That if things were truly hard, genuinely hard, a great many men would not make it. Now, in a very real way, I was observing a discussion the other day we've been watching with our family, and some really great thinkers. They were discussing this idea, and they said, and these are older men in their 60s, and they kind of all agreed, like, hey, yeah, our society really hasn't truly been tested. And they were talking, about Europe, because they're from Europe and the UK and from the US, and so combined, they're saying, yeah, our countries in our lifetimes haven't really truly been tested yet. And so one of them said, he's like, we can't really tell who will make the test or not, because it's not always clear and evident, and some people will surprise us, right? Of when things get really truly challenging, how they'll rise up in unexpected ways. But those are the outliers, right? Those are the exceptions. For the most part, when things get really truly hard, it exposes where you're at. Right? So it's interesting. You go on a big hike. Just right now, just out the door, go on a big hike. It's going to reveal your condition. Rolling down to the beach. You get down to the beach and everyone, pulls off their clothes and they're just in their swimsuit, and it reveals their habits. It reveals their condition. You go out and do anything challenging. So when your car breaks down, or buses or trains get canceled, or for some reason you have to walk really far, those moments of tests reveal your habits. They reveal what you've been doing in the condition you're in. And as you've heard me say many times, we do not live at the level of our hopes, we live at the level of our habits. But what's crazy, because things are so easy and comfortable and convenient, some people are living at the level of their hopes. Like financially and physically. I mean, they can have the houses or the cars or the things. They're getting away with things that they would never be able to get away with otherwise. And I hope I'm articulating this in enough different angles that you really are grabbing hold of this idea, thinking, yeah, like, what are some things that we're, quote, getting away with that there's no way we could get away with in tough times? And where we can be lazy and indifferent and apathetic when things are comfortable and convenient, right? When there's an abundance, when the economy's super strong, even the slackers earn enough money to stay in operation, right? When there's nothing like truly testing your physical limits, then you even being out of shape and overweight, you can get away with it because things are so easy and comfortable and convenient. But what happens when things get real? When real troubles show up? Then what? And I want to invite each of us today, myself included, to walk through this journey of the whole, what I've presented the wheel of life before, and the wheel of life essentially is you take this. There's a cool. You can find them online. They're super cool, and I've shared them, printed them out before, and used them a lot. But it's essentially you have this wheel, and each spoke represents an aspect of your life, from your health and fitness, your marriage, each of your relationships with your kids, your recreation, your finances. And you could actually do a wheel for each part of your life. You could do a marriage wheel, and each spoke would be, listening, sex, connection, intimacy, dating, pursuing goals together, finances together, dreaming together. You could do each aspect of that, and then you could do a wheel for each kid and go through, like, how's my relationship with them, how engaged, how's their education, how am I contributing, how am I modeling, right? You go through each one. It's really powerful. It's such a powerful exercise. But let's just take a general wheel of life, and you've got your recreation, you've got your work, you've got your health and fitness, your spirituality, your mind, body, spirit, right? Your social, your relationships, all those things. And you take that aspect, and it's like, how am I doing? And how am I doing in prosperous times, which is right now? And how would it hold up? I guess that's the question I'm asking today for all of us. How would your habits hold up under pressure? How would your habits hold up under pressure? And I think a lot of us would be in trouble. Would your spiritual fitness endure an extreme test? Would they withstand the test? Would your relationships, your friendships, your family relationships, would they withstand a test? Have you been working on them enough? Are they so solid they would withstand the test? Would your fitness? That's kind of an easy. Fitness is the easy one. That's why it makes such a great metaphor. Like, would your physical condition withstand the test? How about your mind? So obesity is just off the charts, and unbelievably to me, it's getting worse. It's so crazy. It went now. I mean, there's a definition of being overweight, and then there's a definition of being obese. Both of those are just climbing like crazy, but obesity just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I keep wondering, how is this even possible? And yet it keeps happening. So that one is just wrecking lives and literally killing so many people. But so is the mental, emotional illness and weakness. That is rampant and increasing. And mostly it's a manifestation of habits. So how you respond to things mentally and emotionally and physically, obviously, is just revealing your habits. So would your mental state withstand a test? Would your emotional state withstand a test? And the challenge, I think, for most men is they don't think like this. They don't think through the test. They don't put themselves to the test enough. They just kind of rolling along, just doing life. And I want to extend that out to you. Like, are you doing that too? Are you just going through the motion, you're checking the boxes, or you're just going through life and you're not thinking about the bigger picture? And we have to be so deliberate about it. We have to set aside time to really think about the big picture. Otherwise, you just do life, and you just go along, and years pass, decades pass. And again, because our lives are so easy and comfortable, convenient, we can let years and decades pass. Like our parents, their generation, they lived their whole lives in relative ease and comfort. It was good. They were the children of the baby boomers. Well, maybe they were baby boomers or children of baby boomers, but for the most part, they were the children of those who were in the wars, right? So my grandpa was in the war, and then he came home and had my mom and her siblings, and they grew up in this just time of prosperity and growth and ease and comfort. They're going to spend the bulk of their lives in good times. And it's crazy, but we have to stop and say, well, wait a minute, what if the test comes, whether it's to us individually or to our families or to our communities or to our entire civilization and society, am I ready? Am I mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, socially, financially battle ready? Would my finances, would my business withstand the test, the pressure? My marriage, each of my kids, well, my relationship with my kids, and then each of my kids and their condition. And you and I were responsible for helping them get to that kind of condition, battle ready, so to speak. Would your mind hold up? Would your emotions hold up? What's sad to me is that grown men will snap and explode over little ridiculous things that, mistakes or setbacks or unexpected things, or the kids do something and they come unglued. I think, man, if you lose your bananas over those little things, what are you going to do when it actually is hard? If you crumble at the first sign of pressure, what are you going to do when the pressure is real? So I want to invite you to challenge yourself regularly. Go out and deliberately seek out tests. And what's cool about this is because you're not seeking real trouble, you're seeking simulated trouble. So you do endurance races or competitions, you do some triathlons or marathons, or one of my coaching clients, he got into running, did some half marathons and some marathons, and now he's doing 100-kilometer races across the Andes, down in Patagonia. I mean, how rad is that? And you just keep pushing those limits. But you do, maybe do some kind of business challenge. You're like, okay, let's put this to a test. Let's put on a pressure test here. Or you try to grow your business or get new business or see how much time you can take off. And again, I don't want you to negatively test your relationships, to put negative pressure on them, but I want you to just go through this simulation and be like, yeah, this, if things got really bad, I don't know, I haven't been investing enough in that friendship or with that child or any of my children for that matter, or for your marriage. Like, go through that and just walk through it, right? Make sure you're in a great spot. I just had an absolutely phenomenal bucket list weekend with my children in France with two of my teens. We're training for Mount Kilimanjaro. So there's a perfect example, right? We're leading a trip to Kilimanjaro in February. It's mostly full. There's a couple spots if you want to join us. It's going to be a life-changing experience. But there's a perfect example. Go climb a gigantic mountain. That's putting yourself, your body, your mind, your emotions, your spirit, it's putting it to the test. That's the point. You're creating a pretty safe test, right? No lives are going to be on the line there. And yet it's testing you. And it'll test you socially and spiritually and mentally and physically, obviously. That's the point. And so, one of the reasons for this last weekend is we went to France, into the French Alps, with my two teens who are climbing Kilimanjaro with me to train. And on our hardest, longest day, we were trying to gain as much elevation as absolutely possible. And so we were hiking up towards Mont Blanc. And it rained and rained and rained. It was cold rain, it was windy. And then once we hit a certain elevation, it just started to snow and sleet. And we'd go around the points, and it would just get this huge blast of wind blowing snow and sleet in your face after you've already been wet and cold and hungry and tired, and your legs are burning because you're just gaining elevation so quickly. It was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. And my two teens, not a syllable of complaint. In fact, they actually enjoyed it. And we were tired and hungry and thirsty and cold. And part of it was just miserable. And the three of us, we just loved it. We're like, yeah, this is awesome, right? It's hard. And we're out there doing a physical challenge, and the weather was perfect to add to the challenge and the pressure. But it's this perfect way to test our relationships and our mental strength and fortitude if we can keep our emotions in check, it's beautiful. So test yourself like that. Push your limits. Find ways to grow and expand and put simulated pressure, safe pressure, on each aspect of your life to see if you can withstand the test. And I promise you're going to find this out, right? When I was in college, actually before college, when I was out on my own, I was 16, 17, living on my own, some great guys gave me a job that I know I didn't deserve, doing landscaping. And so they taught me how to become a landscaper. And whenever we'd put in a new sprinkling system, we'd run a pressure test, right? You glue it all up, you glue all the joints, you put all the heads on, you line everything out before you buried it, right? That's a big mistake. You go ahead and bury it and then turn it on and there's leaks. That's a trouble. So before you bury it, you run a pressure test. And you open up the city pressure and it comes in, in through the 1-inch pipes and then 3/4 inch pipes, and you do a pressure test and you can see if the joint wasn't glued well enough, or if one of the heads is busted or something. You run the pressure through there, and if you got water squirting out all over the place, you're like, okay, now I've done a pressure test. I can correct these. So then when the pressure comes back on, you're like, no, it's good. It'll handle it. That's essentially what we're doing. So run yourself through different pressure tests. What's interesting, and this is circling back now to Wild Swans. Such a great book. Please read it. It's a personal, generational story about China and the struggles, the wars, the changes in their society and economy and communism. And it gives you the playbook for communism. And we have to understand that kind of thinking, because those kind of crazy Marxist and communist ideas are coming back. And they always do. They always circle around and usually come around in a fourth turning. And just, it's madmen and tyrants and dictators and coups. And what stood out, well, a couple things stood out. Lots of things actually stood out. One of them is what the Chinese people endured is quite literally unbelievable. They endured so much. They were so tough. They were so tough. It's inspiring. And it's also a tragedy, because dictators and tyrants and these coups, they're ridiculous. They are so into their own, all they care about themselves. We would be utterly and ridiculously naive to think that the government has our best interest at heart. What a joke. What an absolute joke. So, and you're like, yeah, but we live in the greatest country in the world, and we have this democracy. Like, no, it's so naive. It's so naive to even think that, like, the FDA or your local government or your state government or your federal government has your best interest at heart. It's like extremely, extremely rare that anyone in government has a genuine, sincere interest for the well-being of the people. That is so rare, and it'd be naive to think that. But what happens, and I saw in this book, it was illustrated so well, so it's been on my mind, is that these coups come in and they take over, but they don't think through potential tests and challenges and trials. So it was a perfect illustration of how it's done on a macro level, but also how it's done on a micro level with each of us individually. We'll come in and we don't, I guess what the story that brought it up, and it happened multiple times, the coup comes in, takes over the government, and then you see it, once it was illustrated so well in the book and the story, I'm like, oh man, that's perfect. Is they come in, they're like, yeah, we're in power, oh, this is awesome. And they kick out the government and they take over, and they're like, yeah, now, and all they want, they have the power, they have the money, they get to write the rules, all this great stuff, right? And they think, this is great, we have arrived, we are doing we're awesome. It's so, wow, so great for us, right? But an example that is so powerful and so important, a coup comes in, they're not thinking, hey, if there's any natural disasters, how are we going to take care of that? Look, we better set up systems and strategies. We better prepare. We better set aside funds and resources and we better train our people. We better have everything totally dialed in so that if something goes wrong, we can help them. And just an iconic, classic example, they don't think through that. They don't think about how things could go wrong. They don't think about what they're going to do if something doesn't work out. It doesn't even cross their radar. Like they come in like, yeah, we took over power. Yay us. Wow, this is so great. And then a natural disaster happens and they are left with a seriously major disaster and no way to handle it because they didn't even think through it. They didn't think through the pressure test. They didn't even consider it, right? And so tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions and millions of people suffer needlessly because leaders didn't think through any pressure. They didn't even think about what are we going to do if something goes wrong. They just think, well, nothing will go wrong. And there's people like that today. There's men, and maybe you've been guilty of that in certain aspects of your life. I know I have. Where you don't think about what could go wrong. You don't run a pressure test. And everything's so easy and so comfortable and so convenient, and things have been so abundant for so long, that when something goes off, you're like, it'll work out. And it does. It does. And people are lazy and indifferent and apathetic, and they make stupid mistakes, and they're so negligent. And it still works out. And they think, see, no big deal. But that's only because we're living in these times. There's no way that would work. There's no way they can get away with that in different times. And as with all cycles in history, it's going to repeat itself, and it's going to happen. And I'm not, I'm optimistic. I genuinely am optimistic. I'm not the naysayer. I'm not Mr. Negative guy, but it can't perpetually climb. The markets can't keep going, right? Things can't stay in an unhealthy state. I mean, you might be getting away with some poor health right now, but you cannot, literally impossible to do that perpetually. It will catch up to you. Nobody gets away with anything. The body keeps score. The relationship keeps score, keeps the record, right? Your accounts keep score, and it will catch up. So the big message for today is to do a pressure test on every important aspect of your life. Just pressure test it. And you can do it mentally first and spend some time writing, get your journal out, spend some time writing, dictating, recording, just really exploring. Talk about it with your spouse. Talk about it with each of your kids. Talk about it with the people you work with, your employees, your coworkers, your team members, your partners. Like, go through this and say, hey, how would we handle a pressure test? And then do it for yourself with your mind and your emotions, your spirit, your body. And then create some tests, some simulations, and do this regularly. I participated last year in a selection process for aerial recovery. Such a phenomenal organization doing so much good in the world. And in order to be able to volunteer with them actively and regularly, to go into austere environments and be some of the first people on the ground to help in a natural disaster, they have a very rigorous selection process because they realized, they did all these people with good hearts say, I want to come out and volunteer. And they didn't have the skill set. They couldn't handle the pressure. They failed in the pressure test. And the last thing you want to do is go into an austere environment and have to add more casualties, that your volunteers become casualties because they're not ready, because they're not trained, because they can't handle it physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, financially, whatever. They're just not there. And so this organization realized it's all created by former special forces guys. And so they create this training process to make sure we get the training, but it also comes with this very rigorous testing process. So they have created a pressure test. And I went through it, and I'm on their special operations and reconnaissance team. And my sons wanted to join. So I'm like, well, you got to go through the whole process. You got to take the courses and the classes and then go through the pressure test. And so they're next week going through this selection process. My 19 and 18-year-old sons. And I'm so excited. I'm going to be there as a leader, helping facilitate the experience. And it's going to be so tough. It is going to be so hard. And it was last year. And that's the point. They purposely do things to pressure test your mind and your body and your emotions and your social skills and your spirit, your patience. And what it does is the pressure test reveals your habits. Because you can't, and here's the important thing about a genuine pressure test. You can't get away with, cramming for the test, so to speak. The pressure test in this case is so intense that you can't eat poorly and not exercise for months or years and then do something for a few days or a few weeks to pull it off. There's no way. So if you neglected your health for months and then think, oh, in just a couple weeks I'll go ahead and I'll get back in shape and I'll be able to pull it off. You might be able to do that for an easy pressure test, but a genuine pressure test will reveal the negligence. Ooh, let that sink in. A genuine pressure test will reveal the negligence. And so it's revealing those habits. Again, I just can't repeat this enough with enough emphasis. We do not live at the level of our hopes. We live at the level of our habits. And that is not more true anywhere else than in a genuine test. So test yourself constantly and then realign, readjust, recalibrate your habits so that they are ready for real, genuine pressure test. Push those limits. Go do big, epic things that make you uncomfortable. Do micro level stuff where you're doing it daily and weekly, and macro level stuff where every quarter, every year you're doing something huge. And a big one like Kilimanjaro, I think is such a great example because it's the same thing. That is a big pressure test. And you have to train for months. And your habits have to be aligned, or that size of a pressure test is going to reveal where you're missing and where you're off. So, love you fellas. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being good men. Thanks for striving. Set up these tests and test the pressure and then get the habits aligned. And this is literally why I created the Be the Man Masterclass and Tribe. To the tools, the resources, the tips, the training, the brotherhood in there, that community of men, and we're all going after this. And I set up badges. We have a warrior badge, we have a philosopher badge, and we have a king badge. And inside there's all these requirements to get the badge. You have to go through a lot of stuff. It's rigorous. And you're training your mind and your body and your spirit and your relationships. You're going through your whole life to get your habits dialed in so you're ready for whatever test can come. And get to a place where, gentlemen, we can withstand the test. So if you want or need some coaching, some systems and strategies that just work, that have been gathering for 25 years putting this together, join this masterclass. Get in this community, this brotherhood of good men and businessmen and entrepreneurs with families who are striving to be the best husbands, the best fathers, the best men, the best businessmen we can be, so that we can withstand the test and we can stand firmly when everything gets crazy and truly be men. Thanks, fellas. Love you guys. Be the man.